On social media, people like to share the stupid food they ate, their dumb selfie face, and the fact that they don't need no man or woman. But the only thing they should be sharing is Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast. I'm Rock.
And I'm Archie.
Well, our opinions, they might not matter to some, but...
What are you doing in there?
It's a podcast.
Immature, crass, trashy. And those are their good qualities. These poor schmucks are a couple of IQ points away from eating paste. But when it comes to music, sports, and comedy, well, that's all they know. You're listening to
Not These Two Fucking Guys.
Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast.
There's a couple people in this world I don't like.
Okay. I think I know one.
Got a little buckle stuck in my teeth.
With the... your sister out of this. So with the state of the world today, and you can't, you have to social distance. I know you're like a big gym rat. What are you doing?
Push-ups in my backyard. I got those dumbbells. I borrowed them off a friend. Those dumbbells that you click the dial and they go from 5 to 40 and they're like little plates that come out.
Explain to me how the fuck is that? I see them. How does that work? How do they get heavier? I don't get it.
You turn the dial and the dial clicks to the weight that you'd like. That lever activates how many plates are going to come out of the base. If I put on 5, like the handle and like a little dumbbell comes out. If I turn on 40, the handle plus 5 plates come out. You fucking nimwit.
But I don't get it, but you're lifting the whole fucking thing, no? Every time?
No. Schmuck.
Okay, maybe I have to do more research, but until then, would you want to come over or actually, no, we can't. We have to social distance. Do you want a virtual jazzercise with me?
I think I've jazzercised once. It was in Keensburg.
That was jazzercise.
Oh, jazzercise. Whatever. I get them confused all the time. I have a question. If you can't go to the gym, what are you doing to work out?
I mean, for me, lifting is like a way of life, almost like a lifestyle.
Do me a favor. Can you move over to the left? Your belly's getting in the way. Good?
Your sister's ass is getting in the way. I actually just recorded my weight the other day, and your boy's down to 179, cracked the 180, okay? So
wow,
it's a lifestyle for me. I'm going to actually start lifting now. I'm using this quarantine time or semi-quarantine time to actually lift in my garage with my 10-pound fucking dumbbells. Speaking of dumbbells.
I think I was 180 in middle school.
Madonna me. You were definitely, your clothes were husky.
I'm husky.
Small, medium, large, husky.
Piece of shit.
I've been told.
Yo, Rock, did you hear something news with Uncle Phil?
I heard a rumor. It's the rumor of the week.
Oh, rumor of the week. Rumor of the week, please.
I heard that Uncle Phillip Anselmo was going to join Kerry King and Gary Holt and essentially continue Slayer.
With the drummer of Slayer, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I heard that it may be Jason Bittner from that was in
Shadows Fall.
This is a super fucking, it sounds cool, but it's definitely a rumor. And it's intriguing. And who knows what it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be, I mean, you can't continue Slayer, right? I mean, that's just, Tom Araya is almost, obviously synonymous with Slayer, Phil with Pantera, but I know that Phil is a huge Slayer fanatic, right? Him and Kerry King have been friends for years. I'm just going to say, no matter what they do, it's probably going to be cool.
Well, you have to know that it is Phil's wheelhouse.
It is.
So, if they bring the metal, he's going to be ready and he's going to add his Phil to it. No pun intended. I think if they decided to go that route, it would definitely stir things up in the metal community and people will bite on this. How good it will be, I don't know. Can you go wrong with that much metal?
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing though, like in the age that we're at right now, or the state, I should say, that the world is in, where there's absolutely no fucking live concerts. I mean, you would think that people are going to throw their money down to see Phil and Kerry in the same band, and saying Gary Holt and Jason Bittner, that's pretty much a supergroup, right?
Yeah, that would be classified as a supergroup. And just think of it, you damn well know they're going to throw a Pantera cover in there.
Yes.
So
you definitely know.
I think I would be very excited. So let's hope that rumor is true.
What else this week in the world of music? Chuck Billy's got fucking coronavirus.
Uncle Chuck? They're all uncles.
They're all our uncles, yeah. The metal family. But I read an encouraging article today that he's doing well. And he's fighting it. It kind of almost seems a little bit more real when like a celebrity or somebody that you look up to or like someone you know that's famous has it. It seems a bit more real, right?
You mean like Bravo's Andy Cohen?
Does he have it?
Yeah, I think he's got it.
Wow.
Sorry. I could be lying.
Shit's fucking real. I mean, poor Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. He's fucking killing it. He's out. You're not going to stop Tom Hanks.
I saw a funny meme. It was Wilson, the volleyball. And it said, hey, I heard you're going to be in isolation again, Tom. But no, it's obviously nothing to joke about. But we try to make whatever we talk about funny. People are stuck in their homes now, and they're watching Netflix, listening to music, listening to podcasts. So if this could be a little escape from the BS that's going on, we try to bring a little bit of humor.
Of course.
The bad thing is every fucking concert's canceled.
Everything.
Right? All these reunion shows that we talked about.
Metallica is streaming every Monday. They're going to stream a concert.
Free nice of them. I mean,
yeah, it's going to be called Free Metallica Mondays. They're going to start. I think they're going to start streaming it. I think that's cool. I know that they want to maybe keep their chops up while they're not playing, and I'm sure that these guys are always down to stay home because they're a little older now and family men. That they want to stay close to home. They'll go on a Monday, stream the concert, and go back to their lives. You know what I'm saying?
Which is cool. They've come full circle from their fucking Napster days. Yeah. They're giving away shit free on the internet. It's everything's come full circle. That might actually be one of the signs of the apocalypse, to be honest with you.
And then they're going to go home and take a Napster?
No, but as Sean would say, our friend comedian Tribune, you fucking hack.
The series kicked off earlier this week with a video of Metallica's June 2019 live at Slane Castle show in Ireland, which is still available on the band's Facebook and YouTube pages. Now, I'm wondering if they're going to stream shows that were already
already
recorded, or are they going to play? That's a good question. Now, they might just be fucking streaming shows. Yeah, they're probably not going to play every Monday for us.
I don't know. I think it was cool if that's what they did, right? I mean, if you're seeing even though you're not there, right, but it's live, it's something that no one's seen before. I think it's a bit more exciting than showing some, a concert that people have seen already.
I've seen Metallica multiple times, just like you, I presume.
Yes.
How fucking fast are they live?
Pretty fast, and like even still to this day, I know that you said you age shamed them before by saying they're a little bit older.
Right, enough.
It was a little bit of age shame. I gotta be honest with you.
All right.
Kirk's not gonna be happy about that. That's for sure.
You're a fucking shame.
I've been told. They came back, dude. They haven't slowed down, and like you said, I mean,
I don't give a shit what anybody says. Their last album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, is fucking tits.
Amazing. I mean, you got to look at you got to take it into context, right? Okay, I don't care about age, but apparently you do. You have to see how old they were when they made it.
Keep going.
Right? How relevant it was. How every song was fucking catchy, and not for nothing in that genre. When that album came out, tell me who was putting out better shit.
True. No.
I think it's one of their better albums, and again, I know that there's a half, I don't know the percentages, but half of the Metallica fans that think that Metallica retired, quote unquote, after Injustice for All. There's some Metallica fans that never listen to, never listen to. So yeah, I
don't give a fuck. Let me just tell you, Black Album is one of the best rock albums out there, but there's also metal influences from their past albums in there. But yes, it's more rock. But the Black Album is undeniably one of the best fucking metal hard rock albums of all time. But if you ask me personally, and it's just where I with the time I grew up, it's either like Ride the Lightning or Injustice for All is like one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, I know you always talk about Injustice for All, and I'm with you. And I think, and again, I know that James Hetfield went to definitely a different type of singing on the Black Album and is more melodic. But the tone of his voice and Injustice for All, for me, is probably my favorite.
What gets me is that not everybody, but a lot of people that go into record, bands that go into record, they'll immediately reference, dude, I want my drums to sound like Lars's on the Black Album.
Yeah.
I want my drums.
We fucking said that.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the first thing that we said to Bumblefoot. We record drums first. How do you want it to sound? I'm like, hey, make it a mixture of Vulgar Display of Power and Metallica Black Album. And that's how it fucking sounded. I mean, that there's no better drum sound, in my humble opinion.
But then when you go to like Saint Anger, the banging of the snare was like your sister on a Saturday night. It was just low and flat.
It sounded very tinny. And listen, to Metallica's credit, they say they tried to never make the same album twice. So listen, you're gonna get a couple of Saint Angers in there, right? A couple of things that maybe in retrospect they would do differently, but it's all part of being an artist and trying to adapt and change your style.
Yeah,
and not make the same record twice.
I walk a 100-pound pit bull down the street. I'm a tough-looking son of a bitch. Okay. I walk a 3-pound peekaboo down the street. They're looking for my husband walking behind me.
One of my all-time favorite comedy albums ever is Jack and Coke by Artie Lange, 2009.
It was a great album.
A lot of people out there give Artie a lot of shit, or nobody probably trusts him. But yeah, I know he's on the mend now, and I commend him for it. But
I tell you what though, I heard he's doing well. Our boy Artie, our fucking Jersey boy. Yeah. And that's good. It's good to hear because yikes.
yeah, we'll leave it at yikes. But his album Jack and Coke, I can't remember when I was put onto it quite some time ago. And I remember listening to it at work, laughing my balls off at work. And I probably played it over and over again. Just because A, we're from Jersey, so it hits home. B, his delivery, and he was so fucking on.
You actually put me onto this album. You know that. I don't know if you remember this, but this is back in the Burn Me a CD days.
Yes,
so
yes.
You burned me a CD. And obviously we're big Artie fans. Like
was that Burn Me a CD for a hand job? Oh no. That's something different. All right, go ahead. Go.
That was a different thing.
All right.
Artie's Italian, and he's from Jersey, and he's a comedian. We're like, okay, he got us. No, but I mean that was through his heyday on the Howard Stern show, and dude, thought he was obviously phenomenal. But this album, I feel to me was his best work.
Oh.
I've read his books. You've read his books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good. But as far as a comedy album, yeah, I was laughing from beginning to end.
So there's a skit called Lawrence Taylor. Now, if anyone out there knows Lawrence Taylor, well,
Lawrence Taylor is the greatest. Okay, so there's in my book there's a few definitive greats at their position, right? And I'm going to say the first one, and maybe it's not popular because I'm a Giants fan, but I got no beef with them because you beat them twice. But Tom Brady's the GOAT, dude. He's the best quarterback of all time. I hate to break it to you.
Future Buccaneer. Go ahead.
Yeah. Mariano Rivera, the greatest closer of all time, right?
Correct.
Can't dispute it. Lawrence Taylor is the greatest motherfucking defensive player in the NFL's history of all time.
Now there's probably people. There's people who would definitely disagree with you. I don't know, just because.
And those people are called assholes.
Artie Lange sets up a joke. It's like, is there any Giants fans in the crowd? And they're like, yeah. Is there any Jets fans in the crowd? And people are like, yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry. So number one, he set up a joke that's 20 years ago, right? 2009.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Jets still suck. All right.
Actually, it's 10 years ago.
2009.
Yeah, I mean, it's 11 years ago. If you want to do the math.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, my bad.
At Bluefield High School. God bless.
Yo, did you get your GED?
What?
Oh, no. Oh, it's called GED? Bob Shepard, the announcer for the Yankees, who also called the Giants games.
By the way, let's tell them who Bob Shepard was. And like, I couldn't play wiffle ball when I was a kid without announcing. You couldn't do it if you're a Yankee fan. Announce yourself like, now batting number 23, Don Mattingly.
Yes.
Number 23. Dude, that was Bob Shepard was the definitive voice when it came to like public address announcers.
Now, would you say Bob Shepard the best at his position?
The fucking the goat. The absolute goat.
Okay. What if Bob Shepard followed Lawrence Taylor around in the 80s?
So the premise was that Taylor was the most dominant force defensively in football, that he was always involved in every play. So Correct. It would be run by Tony Dorsett, tackled by blah, 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 and Taylor. So every fucking play he was saying, and Taylor.
So could you imagine so Bob Shepard would follow him around in his personal life? That's how Artie Lange explains it. If Bob Shepard followed him around 24/7, it would sound like, testing positive for cocaine, in a Jeep on the New Jersey Turnpike, an Asian hooker, and Taylor. The fucking skit was genius. He laid out all these scenarios of how Taylor would be fucking up with cocaine and everything like that. And then he closes the skit.
Unfortunately, all fucking true stories.
Yeah. Closes the skit with himself. He's like, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I mean, how about if Bob Shepard followed me? So then this is where 5 skits in, he had me, and I was like, I fucking love this guy. He goes, doing a line of heroin off a mozzarella omelet at the TikTok diner on Route 3. I was like, fuck yeah, bro. It was great.
An Asian hua.
And Taylor.
Artie Lange. And Taylor.
Yeah. So
dude, what a fucking great bit.
Great bit. There's so many awesome fucking bits on this album. If you've never listened to Artie Lange, Jack and Coke, it's on Spotify. It's anywhere you can stream your shit. Go listen to it. Artie Lange would appreciate it. We would appreciate it. It's dope.
Today we have my good friend Mike Constantino with us. Mike, what's up, pal?
What's up, my man? I'm happy to be here, although I am a little startled because when I got the call to do a podcast, I said, I hope it's anybody but these two fucking guys.
I like it. So Mike is a promoter, a manager, a gym owner, has had countless fighters pass through the UFC. So we wanted to get you in and talk to you and get your perspective of, the current state of mixed martial arts, what you're up to, and, what's going on. So, like, a little backstory. Now, we met in 05, 06, 07-ish. My brother trained at, your gym, AMA. But let's back up before that. You started off as, like, a bodyguard, I remember you telling me.
Yes. Started off training martial arts seriously, full-time. Again, I trained my whole life, but probably about 19 years old with my instructor, Tom Patiri. It was in Elmwood Park, New Jersey, and Tom also owned a security company, executive protection, called State of the Art Security. And at the time, he had, huge names, Michael Jackson, Chris Rock, working for the biggest names, and had the contract for the Grammys. And I just wanted to do it, strive to do it, started with low-level jobs and worked my way all the way up to, I did the 2003 Grammy Awards at Madison Square Garden. I was the detail leader, 150 agents, in liaison with NYPD, counterterrorism. It was after 9/11, pretty close to it, so it was pretty surreal. And segued, into the martial arts. I own AMA Fight Club, currently in Whippany, New Jersey, and soon to be opening in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey, a brand new facility in early April.
So tell us, what how'd you transition into owning a gym? Like, what made you? Because back when you got the gym, it was, MMA wasn't as in vogue as it is now, right? So
yeah, it goes to the bodyguard. I was traveling the country and we were training different martial artists and school owners throughout the country in a system that my instructor, Tom Patiri, created called CDT. And I had the pleasure to meet world famous martial artists like Olympic medalist Mike Swain and Kathy Long and Ernie Reyes, senior and junior. And they all own gyms and they had hundreds of students. And, I did see the monetary side of it as well as my love for the martial arts and realized if, these guys are doing it and I'm being flown here to teach them something that I knew, I could do it. So, decided to open the gym and get into the business as I was traveling. And I had the opportunity to meet many famous martial artists like Mike Swain, Kathy Long, both Ernie, senior and junior Ernie Reyes. And I saw they had hundreds of students and they were dedicated. And I saw the business side of it, being I had a business mind at the time, and decided to open my own gym. And I opened it with a black belt training partner at the time. We took a shot, and it was before MMA. Started teaching kids karate and the adult martial arts system that I knew. And I had a love for Muay Thai. And one day after training in my martial arts style called Hamdo, one of the guys said to me, let's just wrestle, and you can't punch, you can't kick, you can't knee, you can't elbow. And I was like, well, what the hell's the fun of that? And I was 200 and something pounds. He was 150 pounds, and he got on top of me and I couldn't get him off me using his rule set. And then vice versa. When I got on top of him, he easily got me off of him. So I was intrigued by it. So I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time with Lou Vintaloro, who was one of the first black belts in New Jersey. And I fell in love with it. And then as I was opening the gym and training Muay Thai, I was training Jiu-Jitsu, and I wanted to add it to the gym. And I went out and I saw Jamie Cruz, who was also probably one of 4 black belts in the state of New Jersey at the time, world famous Renzo Gracie black belt. And what started as a private lesson, part-time teaching, turned into 6 years of a full-time thing. And he helped me build the AMA Fight Club and the fight team and a great Jiu-Jitsu program. So it was kind of an evolution over time.
I remember you telling me that you said you wanted to start a fight team. So you were like, fuck it, I'll take a fight. What year was that?
That was August 5th, 2006 in the aforementioned Wildwood, New Jersey.
It wasn't at the Admiral, was it?
It was at the Wildwood Convention Center.
So like going into that, like, I mean, that's what I admire. Like, you want to start a fight team. You're like, if I'm going to start a team, I'm going to do it myself. I remember you telling me this like years and years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I was training at the time, and like I told you, I had a love for Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. Nobody was doing it at the time. There was a Taekwondo school in every major shopping center, in the state, and there was no Jiu-Jitsu. Like I told you, there was 5 black belts at the time, and now there's a Jiu-Jitsu school pretty much in almost every shopping mall in the state. So you can see the evolution of it, and as far as the fight team, I was actually doing a favor for a friend at the time. If you're in the North Jersey area, you've heard of Joey's in Clifton. You've heard of Yakety Yak. So I was friends with Joey Jr. and on a Thursday night, they had an 18 to get in, 21 to drink Thursday night party. That was pretty insane. It was huge, the biggest around, and it was a crazy night because underage drinking, you could think, because of the 18 thing. And he asked me to work for him privately rather than the bouncers that worked there. He brought me in as a private security advisor, and I basically, had free run of the place, but I didn't work for anybody at the club other than Joey directly. So nobody really knew who I was or what I did, but they knew I was allowed to kind of oversee everything and bounce people in, out. And
I think he threw me out once.
It was actually,
that's why you look familiar.
I'm going somewhere with this. So as I'm training, and you think at the time you're on top of the world, you could beat anybody. Or there was another bouncer at the Joey's in Clifton who happened to be Dante Rivera. So Dante Rivera is a famous, fighter, jiu-jitsu guy, one of the pioneers in New Jersey mixed martial arts. I mean, fought for Bama back in the day before it was even popular. Went on to the Ultimate Fighter, the UFC reality show. Then he had, a fight in the UFC. And the cool tie into this also is cornering Dante Rivera was the first UFC fight that I ever cornered in my life, along with Ricardo Almeida. It was an honor. Dante even asked me, but I met Dante at the nightclub. We had a little system. Dante would, we sniffed each other out like the two big dogs. You train, where do you train? The whole thing. And Dante's a real intimidating dude, but a sweetheart of a guy. He turned into one of my best friends. We had a lot of fun together, but he was a very intimidating guy. And, became friends with him very quickly. And we went on to train and, hang out together. And he lived down in Jackson. So he used to stay at my place in Denville at a townhouse that all the fighters would crash at. And, developed a friendship, and I wanted to fight. And he was on top of, at the time, he was the champ here in New Jersey. So I fought on the same card that Dante fought on, and we trained together. And Frankie Edgar was on that card. Jim Miller was on that card. Mike Macenzio was on that card. I think there was about 8 fighters, Tom Galicchio, that all went on to the UFC. So it was an honor to be on it. And I lost. And the guy I lost to is one of my best friends now, and he's the head jiu-jitsu instructor at my school and director of operations, and went on to corner him in all of his pro fights after the day he beat me. John Hellwig, one of the best out there.
It's funny because I remember, I can't remember what holiday it was, but I remember me and my brother were at your townhouse. Dante Rivera was there. We all went out that night and went to the city. It was a holiday. There was fucking nobody. It was the greatest night and the worst night because it was like we went to a place, got bottle service. There was
in New York.
In New York, there was nobody there. When we got back, we went to Shannon Rose and Clifton.
God,
it was like
I have a good memory too. I'm trying to think what place this could have been that we went to.
I don't know, but I think we paid for bottle service, and there was like 5 people in the fucking place.
Yeah, we got bottle service.
It was like some kind of holiday weekend. Nobody was in the city.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember. Were we up on like a stage?
Yes.
And it was a smaller place. Okay, I do remember that. Yeah, wow.
But
I do remember that.
That was definitely a good time. So after that, right? So you had a fight. Then you started getting. How did you recruit fighters to your gym?
So that let me think of the first. So I was training with Dante, and again, Dante at the time was the champ in New Jersey, tough role. So I had some friends that were just getting into MMA just like I was. So they would come by the gym, and I always had a tough room. Just, we were always just tough. From the martial arts system I came in, I was brought up very hard. A lot of violence, just knockouts and breaks, and just very violent martial arts system. So we were always very tough. So as we learned MMA, we just had that tough style about us. So word got around that we had a tough room. And one of my first fighters was another dear friend of mine, heavyweight. Talk about one of the most interesting men in the world, Chris Volo. Rock, you know Vo,
I remember
right?
him, yeah.
To surmise Vo, I mean, before I even get into the story, just because it wouldn't do it justice to not tell you who he is. I mean, not only was he one of my heavyweight fighters, but he is personal friends and bodyguard to Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. And Vo went to North Korea 5 times with Dennis Rodman. He's dined with Kim Jong-un. So, I mean, he's been with Charlie Sheen and, on jobs, and he's just the most interesting guy in the world. Not many people in the world other than 5, I think, ever that met Kim Jong-un. 3 Americans or 5, and he's one of them. So it's fucking crazy. But him, so yeah. I met him. I was at the Gold's Gym at the time in Whippany, and I see this big animal. He was like 265 pounds. He looks like Bam Bam Bigelow, if you remember WWE wrestling. And he's like 5'7", but like 270. And he was a awesome fullback, running back, wrestler. And I saw him like tap out pants, running backwards on a treadmill and wrestling in like the aerobics room with his cousin. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? So again, you do that big dog, alpha dog thing. You sniff each other out. We became friends. Where do you train? Putting together a fight team. He came over. He started training. So now I got a big monster heavyweight who nobody can wrestle with and take down. So, you start to build that reputation, with Dante and him. And, Hellwig, who I fought, was at East Hanover, the next town over. And they had, at the time, one of the top schools in the state called Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And they had the Miller brothers, Jim and Dan Miller. They had Hellwig and, bunch of other good fighters. And the key was bringing in Jamie Cruz. I brought in one of the top black belts. So to put it in perspective, the owner of Planet Jiu-Jitsu was a blue belt under Jamie. So I went into Whippany with the best jiu-jitsu guy in the area in a very tough room, with like the Vos and the Dantes. So with that came over to Jim Miller's and the Dan Millers from those schools to learn with a Jamie Cruz, and then Jeff Miller went to Norway or somewhere, and that gym closed, and my gym was on the rise, and kind of took it over. And then I ran with it and built it on what we were talking about earlier, you know, the toughness and the discipline and structure, and attracted fighters from all over the world, you know, let alone, you know, New Jersey. So it was a pretty special time.
I went with my brother down to see, I think Jim Miller and Dan Miller fought that night. It was like right in between where like it was after Planet and like kind of before you, like where they were like in limbo and didn't have like a gym or like trainers.
Well, no, because Jim Miller, his last fight, he lost to Frankie Edgar. That was his last ever fight prior to coming to AMA. So then I cornered him from that fight after the Frankie Edgar fight all the way up to the UFC. The first fight I didn't corner him was Yancy Medeiros, I think, like late in, you know, his career. But, you know, we had about 20-something fights together. So that was Cage Fury, and it was in Atlantic City. And Jim fought Al Buck and Anthony Morrison on 2 different nights. And Dan Miller fought Jose Rodriguez, which was a great fight. And Vo fought on that card, too. So we had the whole crew. And Hellwig actually fought on one of those cards.
Actually, that night, I want to say, I think that's when Rico Rodriguez and Nick Diaz were there as there was a
guests. There was a time. It was either like Jenna Jameson or Tito. Yeah. Rico was there as a guest. Yeah, you're right. And there was somebody else, too. I don't know if I remember Nick Diaz. Was he there? No.
I remember meeting him in...
Yeah?
Yeah. Him and Rico Rodriguez together.
Okay. I vaguely remember that, but I also think there was somebody else like a Tito or a Jenna.
That's not a bad meet.
No. Yeah.
Jenna, how's she doing?
I'll tell you. Yeah, she... I met her at the UFC because, you know, she was married to Tito, obviously.
Yeah.
She was always nice. Friends. And my partner now, Burt Watson, the famous Burt Watson. You know, we have Burt Watson Promotions together, MMA Live. We do a deal with the Hard Rock. But Burt and, you know, Jenna Jameson follows Burt on Twitter. You know, they talk all the time. So it's pretty surreal to have a partner that's connected to so many, you know, powerful people. But
did you ever think,
met her several times.
Did you ever think, like, 20 years ago that you'd end up where you are right now as far as just representing all these athletes and owning a gym and doing all this stuff right now?
You know, it's a great question. I mean, I really had a defined path. I mean, I did 3.5 years at a 2-year school, of which I didn't finish, which was Bergen Community. So I'm not really into the school thing, but
I went there for a year.
Did you? All right.
Yeah.
Well, I did 3 out of 2, 2.5. But no, I wasn't really into that. I really didn't have a path. You know, I was kind of all over the place. Security, and we owned a sports bar. I was like 21 or 2, and I had a sports bar, and it was crazy. It was just a crazy time, you know, and college wasn't for me. I do wish, you know, in hindsight, I went back and had the degree in finance or something that I like to do. But no, the answer is no. I just didn't know it would be this path, but I knew it would be something with sports or commentating, or I like sports and analyzation and coaching. So didn't really think it would be in mixed martial arts. Didn't exist at the time. You know, I mean, there was a UFC, but it wasn't as you know it today, you know,
So the 2 fighters that really took off first out of AMA were Jim and Dan Miller, right?
Yeah. The Jim and Dan, they were the pioneers, per se, yeah. I signed both Jim and Dan Miller to the UFC at the same time, which was an awesome announcement to tell 2 guys they've been working their whole life. You know, you got them to the big show. And I mean, mind you, it was a tumultuous ride from, you know, the moment I met Jimmy, he's off a loss to Frankie Edgar, you know, and then we signed to Cage Fury. I mean, at the time, I got him 2 of the biggest contracts they were offering at the time. And then, you know, we fought for Ring of Combat, got big contracts, then put him in the IFL, and they both became, Dan Miller became champion, and Jimmy was set to fight for the belt. And then we got signed to the UFC, and IFL folded. And then we were held up in legal limbo there. And I literally got the best contract attorney in the country, a gentleman named Patrick English of Dines and English. And Pat English is, I believe, still current counsel for Bellator, but he also wrote what's called the Muhammad Ali Act, which is like one of the most famous acts in all of, you know, boxing, which is, I believe, you can't own a boxer for, you know, multiple bouts, but, you know, a real pioneer. And he helped us with that. And we got Jim and Dan out of the IFL and into the UFC. And the first fight was UFC 87 or 9. Don't hold me to it, but it was in England at the O2 Arena. And Jim Miller fought David Barron, and he submitted him. So we were off to a great start. And then the following week, Dan Miller fought in Omaha, Nebraska at UFC Fight Night, I think 17. And he beat Rob Kimmons with a standing rear naked choke. So we got off to a quick 2-0 in the UFC. It was an
That's fucking awesome.
unbelievable moment, just so
the ride started right there.
it was crazy. I mean, we're in the O2 Arena. The main event is Michael Bisping versus Shinya Aoki, and he's dancing out, and Bisping was huge in England at the time, and you're in the O2 Arena. I mean, it's pretty surreal. And
say I'm some fighter out there that, I'm trying, I'm young, I'm trying to get out there, right? And I'm hearing you talk, and all I'm saying to myself is like, how the fuck could you possibly get me to the UFC? Like, can you just elaborate or just some details about you could easily say, all right, so I got him to the UFC and then we went, but any details behind that?
Sure. I mean, from where? From the day you want to start training before you have your first fight, or when you're already fighting? What point?
As far as from training to even the legality of this type of contract, or
sure. So I mean, it all starts with here in New Jersey. We have one of the best athletic commissions in the entire world. New Jersey Commission is very, very well respected and famous. Nick Lembo is the counsel, and he's basically not only in charge of MMA, but it was the first sanctioning body of the UFC in the Fertitta era. So the first ever show, that the Fertittas and Dana White owned was in Atlantic City at Donald Trump's casino. So hence the relationship between Dana and Donald, even to this day. And Nick wrote the rules of MMA. So, I mean, he's still a dear friend today. I spoke to him yesterday, Nick Lembo, and the commissioner, Larry Hazard, he was a referee for Tyson matches. I mean, it's just, you don't get any more respected and historic than these two people. And they have one of the best commissions. So every state you fight in, there's different commissions, different rules, different medicals, different medical requirements. I mean, everywhere is different. Even in the UFC now, you can fight in New Jersey versus Texas, and you can not knee an opponent with a hand down, or you could with two hands down versus one. So even the fighters don't know the rules to a degree. So it's a very tough job, but it starts with the amateur program. New Jersey has an amateur program. I own a gym. So for instance, if you want to become a fighter, you join a gym. You could be a regular member. You can train in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling. And should you show an interest that you want to fight, we would evaluate you, put you in with our sparring team. And if you're competent enough where you're not going to get killed, and we feel, it's in your best interest.
Am I ready?
We'll put you in the amateur program.
We think you're not going to get killed.
Well, there's a lot of sad realities out there. I mean, because we've seen everything from, keep in mind, I rode the boom from being a, karate school owner to cornering in the UFC. So we had people walk in that thought their Wing Chun could beat our, Muay Thai. I mean, I've seen every crazy shit you could possibly think of.
Have you ever trained almost like a killer? Meaning that the kid comes in, it's like, oh, this kid just wants to hurt people.
Absolutely.
I think he just.
My God.
Johnny, look at this kid. I think he just wants to fuck somebody up.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny that you say that, because it happens in regular class, right? In regular class, you always have what's called the mat bully, but we also have what's called the mat police. So I always have my enforcers that are on the floor that, if I tell somebody don't do something, and I'm telling them out of their own good, meaning you're going to hurt your partner, and you're not listening, there's only so many times you could verbalize something and somebody's not getting it. So then sometimes you have to do it in a physical form or in a physical martial arts class. So, if you're not getting it, we would have people that do it to them, but respectfully, or teach them a lesson. But, on the fight floor, it's more so dramatic. I mean, in our business, it's called green lighting. So if somebody comes in and they're punching somebody in the face or kneeing or doing dirty things, and you tell them to stop one time and they're not, and they're going to get somebody hurt. And this is the fight business. This is concussions, and you get knocked out and your head hits the ground and you die, or you go to do a hip toss and you land on your head and you're paralyzed. So it's serious shit. So, it needs to be taken as such. So if you warn somebody once and they don't listen, you warn them stern the second time, third time they're getting green lit, and your goons are going to get them. So that's how the room polices itself, but it also needs a strong presence and leader, because otherwise you just have all hell breaking loose. And, we've had every one you could think of, from the punch you in the face, the knee you in the face, the choke you unconscious and drop you, every jerk off you can imagine at some point over 15 to 16 years.
Jersey.
We've had them all. I mean, listen, we and great people too, but the mat polices itself.
So you're getting, you got Jim and Dan Miller in the UFC. They're getting pretty big fights. I remember like at one clip, like Dan Miller fought like Chael Sonnen, Damian Maia, Michael Bisping in a row. I mean, that's like
Nate Marquardt,
4 killers in a row. I mean, that's
Paul Harris in Brazil. We're getting spit on walking out to the cage, yelling, "You're gonna die!"
Like, do you?
That was crazy.
I mean, how did it feel? Like you got, you train these guys from Jersey. We're Jersey guys. Trained out of a strip mall, right?
Yeah.
And you're in all these big arenas against like the best MMA fighters out there. I mean, like it's got to feel like a surreal moment.
It really is undescribable. I mean, I can't imagine how these guys feel that actually fight. I mean, I fought, but again, it was at the Wildwood Convention Center. But I mean, when I'm talking about the O2 Arena, I mean, it's historic. It's huge. And I mean, people are yelling and screaming, but you have these memorable moments. And one is we kind of just glossed over was Brazil. I mean, there's a short list of people that you do not want to fight in the UFC. I mean, as stupid as that sounds, because they're all good and they're all bad, but like back in the day, Pride, you don't want to fight Vanderlei Silva, you know what I mean? Or, Fedor. And then when you get to the UFC, you have certain people, you don't want to fight. And for instance, Husamar Palhares, Toquinho is one of them. I mean, he was a nasty leg locker who's been fined and suspended from the UFC and multiple commissions for holding submissions too long or personally breaking your knee or breaking your arm. I mean, like you were just talking about that earlier. And here's somebody that does it for a living and has done it on TV and gets suspended and you just can't control him. And he's wild. And, one of the most dangerous moves.
He doesn't give a shit either. Like he's going to
No. And one of the most dangerous moves are what's called a heel hook because it destroys your knee. It literally, you're taking picture like wringing a washcloth. So you're taking the foot and the ankle one way and the knee the other, and it just tears everything. And that's what he was known for. And that was one of the only fights that I was scared for my fighter's safety because I'm like, if this guy latches on, he ain't letting go. He's going to break your fucking shit. You know what I mean? So it was kind of scary. And Dan Miller's as tough as it gets. So he ain't tapping. He'll let you break his shit. But then on top of it, it was the first time that the UFC went back to Brazil since, the early days. So it was the first time in the Fertitta era, but it's been, don't quote me to it, but like 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was. So people were lined up outside. There were 7,000 people at open workouts on Copacabana Beach in Rio. And, you go to the arena, people are chanting and yelling, you're going to die. And the arena, they're so on top of you. And it's a chant. They do it right now. Anytime that the Brazilians fight the Americans, it's like, Vuha Mayera. My wife will kill me. She's Brazilian. I can't say it. But you're literally chanting, you're going to die. We're walking to the ring. They're scraping at you, spitting on you, throwing shit on you. I mean, it's violent. You can go to UFC Fight Pass and watch the fight, and it was a crazy fight. So Dan's fighting this Toquinho is the most intimidating figure in the UFC at the time. And they're spitting, yelling, chanting, and then it was a crazy fight. So Dan, I think he definitely lost one of the first two rounds, if not maybe both. I'm getting a hard time remembering him. Toquinho is so tough, but Dan did a good job avoiding the submission and squaring his hips. But there was a point Dan got rocked, and Toquinho thought he knocked him out. So he stopped hitting him and ran across the cage and climbed on top of the cage and started cheering. And all of Brazilian fans in the place are going crazy screaming. And Dan staggers up, and the ref never stopped the fight. And Dan's lumbering towards Toquinho sitting on the cage. And then he jumped off the cage, and they finished the fight. And, it wound up being a decision that he lost, but a hard-fought decision. And he may have won one of the rounds, and I think it was 29-28, or if not, but it was a crazy environment, crazy fight. But, yeah, that was a special part of it.
That's awesome.
Who was, I think it was in the IFL. Dan Miller made the guy's forehead touch his chest, which is physically fucking impossible, but...
Yeah, that was dubbed the most brutal guillotine in MMA history. So if you Google that one,
I'm hungry.
Yeah, Dan Miller against Dave the Rockstar Phillips. He got him in what's called the bulldog choke or a 10-finger guillotine, a standing modified guillotine. And he went limp. I thought he snapped his neck. You can't even picture it. Picture your own ear touching your own chest. Just anyone that's listening, try to turn your head and picture your ear touching your own chest. And if you Google it, Dan Miller guillotine choke, Dan Miller IFL choke, you'll see pictures and the video of it. And you just can't picture how someone's ear can touch their chest. But yeah,
I'm gonna show Archie right now.
Okay, I want to see his reaction. Let me see what picture show.
He looked like Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Dude, like, that's like, it looks like a broken neck. Like, how's that guy fucking living?
It was an unbelievable moment. And that was like our first, looking back on that too. So that was the IFL, and that was the first fight we had in the IFL, and it was for the Renzo Gracie New York Pit Bulls. It was a team theme, and I believe it was Fabio Leopoldo was the 185-pound representative. They had a fighter per weight class, and he got hurt. And we all went to Renzo's in the city, and I brought, Volo, the heavyweight, Jim Miller, Dan Miller, and we kind of tried out for the team. And Renzo selected Dan, and Dan fought and won, and the team won. And that was another cool experience. That was at the Izod Center. It used to be the Brendan Byrne Arena, here in New Jersey, and to be part of the show there was awesome because I went to basketball my whole life there, and now you're backstage, and so that was pretty cool. And that was our first big win for AMA Fight Club representing Enzo, and kept the momentum going leading up to the UFC.
So talk about some of the other notable fighters that you managed or came through your gym that went on to UFC success. I know there's a couple champions in there.
Yeah, so we had some homegrown talent, Jim and Dan Miller, Charlie Brenneman. I mean, real studs. But then we had some foreign talent. Was blessed enough to work with Khabib, current UFC greatest male fighter, and Amanda Nunes, the current female greatest fighter. So Khabib, I actually signed him to the UFC. I did his contract, and then cornered him in his first 4 or 5 fights, which, was quite an honor. And Amanda Nunes, cornered her in 1 fight in Strikeforce in Ohio. And they've both been to AMA, trained at AMA with the team. And in addition to them, some famous names you might have heard of, former WEC champion Jamie Varner, John Doomsday Howard, Jimmy Hedis, Ricardo Romero, Mike Macenzio, Adlan Amagov, one of the most talented fighters I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and one of the most feared men in the history of AMA Fight Club. When Adlan was there, no one wanted to train. I mean, he was controlled violence would probably be one of the best words. I mean, devastating, full Jean-Claude Van Damme splits, spinning wheel kicks. Another guy, if you Google like Adlan Amagov knockout, you'll see one of the most violent spinning heel kicks, like a Van Damme movie in Russia. And he would come on Sunday mornings. We had Sunday practice called Sunday School, and people would be like, "Are the Russians coming? Are the Russians coming?" They wouldn't come. I mean, he would like literally throw pinpoint spinning back fist where he'd kick you with like his heel, but in your thigh, and but violent but control. I mean, it was crazy. He was just so good and so talented. So we had a whole pocket of Russians. I mean, a lot of them currently still in the UFC. Alexei Olenek trained with us, and Alexandra Albu, and Khabib, and Adlan, and the list goes on from the Russian sect. But it was really tough because you never knew who was going to be in the room, and that was an interesting part of what we had.
I remember you telling me too, like when you first signed Khabib, maybe after his second UFC fight, like this kid's gonna be a champion. Like he's just like a different level. And, at that time he was still honing his craft, but
it's funny because, when I first met him and he came to a practice at AMA and he was young. I mean, he was so young. I mean, I don't remember 22, 23 and polite and respectful. And, we had, like I said, like a goon squad. I mean, we had, even at 155, I mean, in the UFC alone, we had at that time Jim Miller and Rafaelo Oliveira and just a slew of people at 155 that were just tough. And Khabib came in and held his own, not only with everybody, but you could tell something was special about him. But what really did it for me was, keeping in mind what I just said, I was cornering in the UFC for the 155-pound division. We had Jim Miller, who has, the most fights in the division in that history. And that was a large chunk of his career. I cornered those fights. And then Rafael Oliveira, who I mentioned, and later on Jamie Varner. But similar opponents, and that's what did it for me. So, I mean, I was in the corner when Jim Miller fought, Camille Chalarus and, Pat Healy, two really tough guys. I mean, Jimmy beat Chalarus, but, he was tough, and then Pat Healy beat Jimmy, and he was just big and strong and dominated Jim and bigger and stronger in certain areas that Jim was good at. But then cornering Khabib against both of those guys, Kamal and Healy, and he just destroyed them both, and then I was in his corner against this guy named Abel Trujillo, and Khabib set the record for the most takedowns in UFC history at the time. He had like 25 takedowns or something in this fight against Abel Trujillo. It was like a champion wrestler of not NCAA level 1, but it's something good enough that it was notable. And Khabib set the record, and the previous record, I believe, was in a 5-round fight. Khabib did it in 3. And I just remember seeing the ease that he was beating these people with, and his composure and the way that he was doing it was the eye opener for me. And I was telling anyone with 2 ears that this kid will be champion of the UFC and be very good champion. From seeing it in the corner. It's crazy.
He might go down as one of the best.
He is the best right now. It's hard to dispute. It's unstoppable.
I always get a kick out of like the weight class as far as like 155, right? Monster, he's a machine. If you told me that some kid's gonna walk into this podcast studio and kick my ass at 155, I'd be like,
I'll bring you a 125 pounder. I'll even baffle you more.
I'll go like this. I'll go, go ahead, bring him. These kids would wipe the fucking floor with me.
I tell you what, I always tell everybody, my first, growing up in Bloomfield, everyone, getting in fights, this and that, everyone's a fucking tough guy. The first guy I ever saw that I was that made me think twice about fucking with somebody or talking to people was BJ Penn. I'm like, wait, hang on. This guy will fucking kill me?
Yeah.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, you guys are rock and roll guys. So either this quote or you can help steer me with it. It was either Henry Rollins or Glenn Danzig that said, if you're at a bar and somebody has ears that look like assholes, don't fuck with them. And I want to know who it was. It was either Danzig or but it makes so much sense. You see a wrestler, someone's ears that look like assholes, don't fuck with them.
Yeah.
'Cause you're going to be put on your back and embarrassed and beat up in front of all your friends and family.
Is that a cauliflower ear? I said, you know what?
Yeah.
You want to know what?
It's the truth, though. I'll tell you. It's a scary world out there because not only do you not know what the other person knows, but now everybody kind of knows something. And like I said earlier, I made the joke of a 125-pound person. But if you're an untrained person, this guy will arm drag you, take your back, and choke you unconscious before you could even blink your eyes.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't even realize it. And, the days of going out and getting in fights and all, it just, the whole world's changed.
Did I get him?
Did I get him? Well, everybody's training. It's crazy.
I started so obviously everyone watched the original UFCs when they were younger, the 1, 2, and 3, Hoist Gracie and that kind of stuff.
Tank Abbott?
Yeah. I got back into it maybe 02, 03, 04, that era. And it was, again, the first UFCs were more of not I wouldn't say a freak show, but it wasn't the rules were very different and there wasn't, sanctioned in the way it is now.
You said it correctly because prior to the Fertittas owning it, at the time, Senator McCain called it human cockfighting, and it was banned. And part of getting it unbanned was Nick Lembo, who I mentioned earlier, helping co-author the rules and then being the first commission, New Jersey, to sanction after that whole human cockfight thing, and that the Fertittas and Dana White wanted to legitimize it and bring commissions in to do testing for like boxing did, where it was kind of like the Wild West and unregulated prior. So the history of MMA has been forged and changed through New Jersey, so it's pretty crazy.
And those times, the first thing, when I was getting back into it, you have to reconcile in your head, it's fighting, it's not bodybuilding. You look at some guys and you're like, wait, even guys even back in the day, like Chuck Liddell. I'm like, you look like Chuck versus Tito, right? Tito was fucking huge, ripped. Chuck looked like a gut,
Got a beer gut.
Yeah, what didn't look
Tank
huge.
Abbott, look at Tank Abbott, yeah.
But it's not bodybuilding, it's fighting.
No.
And as it progressed, you saw the guys that were bigger, they had more, when they packed on more muscle and carried more muscle on. Those were the guys that were gas out, and it's tougher to sustain that muscle. And those were the guys that packed on the muscle that was tough for them to get through three round fights.
Yes, and we spoke about this earlier too. The funny part is martial arts always evolves. So speaking about what you just said, if you have memories of UFC 1 and 2, You remember Ken Shamrock coming out. He looked like a Greek god. God. You know what I mean? He was just muscle bound. And, you know, you're like, how the fuck is this guy going to lose? And then... Yeah, he did. And then Hoist Gracie comes out and he looks like a shoe salesman. You're like, fuck is this guy? He's going to get killed. And then before you know it, you know, he's choking everybody out. And here's something that's cool too. The announcers at the time, and you go back to UFC 1, and I mentioned some names earlier. So one of them being Kathy Long, who's a famous world champion kickboxer. She was a commentator for like UFC 1 or 2, along with, you know, Jim Brown and
right?
Bill Superfoot Wallace, who's also from the karate circuit, who I was mentioning earlier. And they had no fucking idea what was going on. And if you go back and you want a good laugh, smoke up some legalized marijuana here in New Jersey and Google UFC 1 and listen to the commentary. They have no idea what's going on. He's like, he's on his back. Oh my God, he's using his own sleeve to choke. I mean, it's a bear choke. I mean, it was just the craziest shit, but it's so funny. You got to go back and listen. But then, you know, like I say, martial arts evolve. So now everybody wants to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu became popular and was winning fights. And then along came a wave of D1 badass American-based wrestlers that were, you know, just fucking badasses, that if you're so good in wrestling and you could teach them to throw a jab cross, a 1-2, they can keep the fight standing or take you down. And then, you know, the jiu-jitsu guy's gonna get you, but, you know, 3 to 6 to 9 months of basic jiu-jitsu, when you get to blue belt level, if you're a freak athlete with a D1 championship wrestling pedigree, you're going to learn to tuck your elbows and not leave your arms loose, and you're going to learn fast. And then they became a handful, and then all the American strong base, not just American, but strong wrestling base, but a lot of them came from American colleges, that they become, you know, D1 champions, like your Josh Koscheck's, and later on Cain Velasquez and all these wrestlers. But, you know, and then after that, then along comes Machido with the tricky karate style, and everybody wants to learn karate. And then Anderson Silva and the Muay Thai and the knees and the clinch. And, you know, so it's always evolving, and that's truly what makes mixed martial arts great, you know. And we were fortunate enough to be along for the whole ride, you know, guys our age.
So what do you think? You think now, because there's so many fighters and so many events, do you think it's like diluted? I try to keep up with it, right? But there's like so many fucking fighters and like so many events that it's like, it was a lot easier back in the day when, you know, back in the day when there was an event like once every other, there were 6 UFCs a year.
See, it's the proverbial double-edged sword. You know what I mean? I look at it both from a business standpoint also, but think about what you just said, right? Imagine back in the day, UFC 1 barbaric, this or that, you know, it was everyone's dream to have it legalized, right? Then it gets legalized. Then it's everyone's dream to be recognized by ESPN. They would never mention UFC. We'd be in the biggest arenas in the world and they would never mention it. It would be shunned. And then they did a deal with Spike and then Fox and now ESPN. So it's just so big. I mean, it's a business. So yeah, you can't have your, you know, both ways. If it's so big and it's going to get diluted down, to your point, what is dilution? Because on the business side of it, you know, content is king. They're creating live original sports content. They're selling it across the world. They're doing live events. They're generating hundreds of millions. From a business standpoint, it's great. So from a fan standpoint, you're saying, is it diluted? What would you trade for that to be able to watch it on your ESPN? If it's a volume of shows, yeah, you're not going to get every card to be like it used to, where, you know, they only had a roster of 80 fighters and every card was great. You know, now it's international. It's fighters. There's not many countries I can name that doesn't have a fighter, you know, represented. So it is a volume-based game and it's a business. So if you don't like the card, don't watch. But, you know, that's my view on it. You know, it's you know, you have some great cards and you have some cards.
I love mixed martial arts, so I'll watch them all, right? And I personally like it because I feel like it's more opportunity for fighters, right? But I also do feel like some of these guys may not quite be ready for the UFC, right? Where like years ago, they wouldn't have made the cut.
But again, what I said, again, you got to use a comparison. Years ago, say there was only 20 shows a year and say there was 80 people on the roster and say it was only America and maybe Canada. You know, now look at where it is. So yeah, I mean, it's a push-pull, you know what I'm saying? So it's no perfect medium, but it's opportunity, it's growth. You know, look at Ireland with Conor, and now the biggest ever. I mean, the Muslim community with Khabib and how big he is. And, you know, you'll see a picture again, if you Google, it's hilarious. You know, you go to the biggest soccer game at the most famous soccer stadium in the world. I mean, I'm not a soccer fan, but I forget what it was. And, you know, Khabib sitting 2 rows in front of Leonardo DiCaprio, you know, and like all the TMZ pictures. He's huge, you know. And then you got Conor McGregor sitting in Putin's box, and then Khabib and his dad having tea with world leaders like Putin. I mean, it just got so big. And now Zhang from China, like, you thought that the Muslims and Khabib and his reach was big, you know, and then along comes Zhang and China's media, you know, they were saying that, you know, it's not Twitter, it's the equivalent to Twitter or whatever it was. It was like a tweet, like you say here, like a tweet goes viral and you get however many hits. It was like 30 to 50x on whatever platform, you know, she was on over there. And it was like so big that like she instantly became one of the most dominant media movers in the world just because of the market in China. So it's just, it's gotten to the point where it's huge.
December 7th, 2012, you were inducted to the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. Tell us about that.
So that was an honor because it was the first class, which was pretty cool. So it was an inaugural class. And, you know, we got a call, said that there's going to be a New Jersey Martial Arts Hall of Fame, and it'd be part of the first class along with some really honor to be inducted along with some of the people. It was a real nice event at a beautiful hotel and great ballroom. And it was just, it was an honor, you know, and it's still going on now year after year. And to know that I was selected, you know, to be part of it, it was a good feeling and making everything that you work so hard for, you know, pay off.
Yeah.
What an honor like that, you know, because there's a lot of sacrifice into doing, you know, what we do, training athletes and traveling and spending time away from your family and money. And there's fights where you'll make money and you'll come out of it negative because you're spending more money either to get there and dinner. And, you know, and anyone that was around me for any period of time could say, I never spared an expense, whether it was a steakhouse or
I can attest to that.
Whatever the hell it was. I mean, we had sponsors that flew us on private jets. You know, we talked about Khabib earlier and Jim Miller. I mean, we flew back from UFC Milwaukee. We had Khabib on the card and Jim Miller, and we flew back in private jet. I mean, it was just like, you know, it was a crazy time.
What do you think was your best and worst UFC moments for your fighters?
Wow. For my fighters or for me?
Well, I want to hear both, actually. Yeah.
So I'll just tell you some highlights. I mean, number one, that first fight. I mean, nothing will ever beat, you know, your first fight with your guy, you know, excluding Dante, because Dante was a dear friend of mine, but he was one of my guys, meaning like AMA Fight Club. I mean, he was a Ricardo Almeida Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and, you know, Ricardo's his guy. And, you know, it was an honor to be in the corner. But like,
he fought Matt Riddle?
He fought Matt Riddle, yeah. Who later on came to train at AMA, you know, over 20 times, and now he's in the WWE, I think it is.
Yep.
Matt Riddle. So, yeah, we've had some interesting people on our mats. But, yeah, I mean, the debut fight for Jimmy Miller, same thing with Jimmy versus Joe Lozon. The first one was probably one of my proudest coaching moments. I mean, it was a bloodbath.
That was like I've seen fucking murder scenes that had less blood in them.
It was an unbelievable fight, but even just the training that went up to it was pretty special, you know, and all of them. I mean, they were all just amazing moments. UFC 100 was awesome. You know, Brock Lesnar on the card. And
I'd be in his weight class, by the way, if I fought.
Me too. Unfortunately, me too. Yeah. It's almost unbelievable. I mean, I walk at like 255, 260 sometimes.
Archie waddles at 240.
Fucking 260. Yeah. Doesn't make sense. But like, you know, big events like that, UFC 100, debut fights, going to Brazil with, like I said, the Paul Harris was sick, the O2 Arena, like moments like that. The Harley Davidson event was pretty cool in Milwaukee. You know, Vegas anytime. You know, Vegas was always sick.
What's your shittiest moments? Or like,
well, any fight that ends in the hospital, and there's so many of them. I mean, you know, you just the Brazil hospital, the Dan Miller, Bull Harris. I mean, picture hospital in Atlantic City is not fun. You know, it's a bad ER. I mean, a lot going on. You know, it's you'll see the craziest shit ever. You know, like at 4 a.m. and Saturday night in Atlantic City Hospital. I mean, but
if you could only see the picture that I have in my head, what I'm thinking about at Atlantic City at 4 a.m.
You can't. I mean, I'll give you one. There was a drunk leaning off the thing, and he was pissing, and the nurse is like, "Enough of this." She walks over, grabs his, you know what, sticks a catheter in it. I mean, just like brutal shit.
And that was the doctor.
It was just disgusting. But Brazil. So Dan had to go to the hospital. Now, I'm telling you, Atlantic City is bad. bad. Can you imagine what it was like in Rio? So like this ambulance pulls up and it's like a Benny Hill show. They're like getting out, they're running around, they're putting on like white lab coats and then like going in their trunks of their cars. And here's the best part. We're in the back of the rig, the ambulance. There's 3 doctors on board. They're all jiu-jitsu black belts. I mean, it was the craziest thing in the world. But then, yeah, we go to the hospital, you know, and now we're watching. So back then, it was the first UFC event back. So it was huge. So Globo, which is the network in Brazil, which is literally like rolling up ABC, NBC, and Fox here. That's Globo there. Okay. And they bought the event and they put it on free TV. So there was like 100 million people in Brazil that were watching this event. So now we roll into the ER and I got Dan Miller, who just fought Paul Harris on the screen. It's being played in there. And Anderson Silva, who's beloved, was the main event there. So I literally watched the main event from the hospital in Brazil. But that's the shit that was the worst part, was being in the hospital, because 9 times out of 10 it's after a loss, and it's like bad as it is. And then, you feel so, you win and you lose with your fighters. You know what I mean? Sure. So those are the hard moments, the losses, but then.
You accept my insurance?
The worst losses. Yeah.
So what do you say to a fighter after like a heartbreaking loss, like whether it's, let's say a close like split decision loss or one that was just really bad, like they really got like beat up?
I mean, every moment's different. It depends. Sometimes you're just the other guy's better, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's you get robbed, or sometimes it's like, you get caught, so it really is. There's no generic answer, because it really is specific, and it's also specific to the person. Some like to cry into their wives' arms, and some don't want anybody in the room. You know what I mean? So you got to know your athlete. You got to know how to talk to them. You got to know, it's a very special relationship, because like I said, you're winning together or losing together.
I remember you telling me one fight that was, troubling was Charlie Brenneman against Anthony Rumble Johnson. How the fuck did he ever make 170? Like, how is that?
I mean, he missed a couple times, but you're right. I mean, how did he do? So that was another one I told you earlier. Like, Paul Harris was probably the only time I said earlier that I was scared for my fighter's life. But another one was fucking Rumble, man. He was, and Johnny Hendricks was scary too at the time. When Charlie fought him. But Charlie had a murderer's row, bro. Yeah. Charlie's one of the toughest kids that we've ever had. Greatest work ethic. Just got the most out of his talent. You know what I mean? And you talk about special moment, all right? This is a sports fucking guy pod or whatnot. I mean, here's another magical UFC moment. I mean, we go to UFC Pittsburgh. So every time you travel to UFC, you have to get there on Tuesday, and the fight's on Saturday. So it's routine. Everything's routine. You got to go. You get pictures taken. You sign your contracts. But then sometimes you're at these hotels where you're in Omaha, Nebraska, and there's nothing else around. So you see the same people all day at the breakfast spot, lunch spot, and you walk to the market, and there's 4 guys at Whole Foods, and it is what it is. But then Pittsburgh we go to, and we were staying at the hotel at the airport. So now you're really not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're venturing out. So we land and we get a call from Joe Silva, the matchmaker, and he calls me and he tells me that Charlie's opponent got hurt and Charlie's fight scratched. So now you're fucking in Pittsburgh, you're set. So now you're counseling the guy. And I had a rule too, like, no matter what, let's make weight. Let's go through the week. Let's like pretend we're fighting. You're trained so hard. Let's cut weight. Let's get on the scale. Let's show pride. And I had a great relationship with Joe Silva, and kind of like, I don't want to say like shared a secret or nothing like that. It wasn't like that at all, but he just made me alert that, in the same weight class, there was another fighter that may have a problem, and to keep Charlie ready. So that's the only little bit that I had to tell Charlie on top of it. And I was a motivational guy, so I don't even know if at the time, and I got to ask Charlie this, if he even believed me that I said there was a possibility he'd have a fight. You know what I mean? But either way, we kept training, we did it. And we literally, to put it in perspective, we did not know that Charlie had the fight until they're calling his name to step on the scale. So what happened was, the main event was Rick Story against, I think it was Nate Marquardt, right? Yeah, Nate Marquardt. Yep. And Nate Marquardt, it came out, had a suspension in a previous state, either New Jersey or Pennsylvania, and it was debatable whether it couldn't have been PA, because we were in PA. It was in Pittsburgh. So they weren't sure if the commission was going to allow it, and for whatever led up to that moment, it was going to the weigh-ins. So we're at the weigh-ins, and now Charlie's like, are we fighting or not? Like, he was like one of those guys that we had that great relationship with, and I couldn't give him an answer. I really didn't know. So now we're get to the weigh-ins, and we still don't know. So you have the UFC legal counsel, Mike Mersch, then you have Joe Silva, you got Dana White, and you're looking, and I'm from the security world we mentioned earlier, so I watch people. So I'm watching who's huddling, who's talking, what's going on, what's their body language. So I look at Charlie's brother, Ben Brenneman, and I'm like, Ben, we got to fight. And it's still not official. And the weigh-ins are starting. Okay. And we're in Pittsburgh, and Charlie's from PA, and we're in the Steelers stadium, you know, and Lamar Woodley's there, and Mike Tomlin. I mean, they literally came to the fight, and, you know, it was just surreal. And then all of a sudden I watched the huddle, and I think it was Mike Mersch or Joe Silva comes over to me and like, he's it. And all of a sudden he just gets online for the weigh-ins, and the weigh-ins happen, and he's up there in Pittsburgh wearing a Steelers, you know, hat and whatnot. He's flexing, and he's in the main event against Rick Story. It was the fucking main event. And then he wins the fight. And at the time, Rick Story was like the 7th ranked fighter in the world, and he's an unbelievable wrestler.
He was a beast, Rick Story.
I mean, it was that Story's like rise, and it was just Charlie's moment, and he won the fight in Pittsburgh, and Mike Tomlin's there, and he's winking at Charlie, and you know, I mean, it was just fucking surreal.
Everything fell into place.
That right there, Rocco, because you asked earlier, I mean, that may have been the greatest moment.
That was, if memory serves me correctly, that was a Sunday night fight, right? It was like a fight night card. And
it's definitely a fight night card.
Because I remember
Sunday.
Marquardt, it was like up until the last minute, like Austin couldn't fight, but
it was the last minute.
Yeah. Like that was, I remember
was the
that fight.
sickest thing ever. I mean, there were so many that, like, even before when you asked me, like, I forgot about that moment. Imagine forgetting about what I'm telling you is the greatest moment. That's how many that there were. You know, I mean, that is the greatest moment, and I didn't even remember it earlier. That's how many fucking crazy moments happened.
Yeah.
So like I'll follow him on social media, and I've talked to him a couple times, but Charlie Brenneman's a hell of a guy. Like he's
one of the best people I've ever met in my life. One of the best people I ever met in my life. Family man, and it's funny. You know, I learn in life as I get older too. You know, a lot of people you're a product of your environment. You know, when you're brought up, you know what you know and what's taught to you, you know, and he just had probably one of the most wholesome and amazing families I've ever met in my life. From mom, dad, grandmother, brother, mom, apron, bacon, cookies, sweet, nice. I mean, just like amazing. And he's an amazing guy, and his brothers are amazing. So, I mean, he's just one of the most special people, you know. So I met some cool people on this journey.
So tell me about the first time you met Dana White.
Well, that's an interesting story, actually. First time I met Dana White ever, I was at the rehab party at Hard Rock in Vegas.
I've been there.
Okay. And
no, you were in rehab. It's something different.
Whoops.
And one of our first ever big sponsors was called Full Contact Fighter, Joel Gold. You know, the clothing company, Full Contact Fighter, and we wore it everywhere. I mean, they jumpsuits, baby blues, camo shirt. I mean, we were badass. We loved it. You know, walking down Atlantic City, our whole team had matching shirts. And I mean, it was just, you know, it was the biggest clothing company at the time, and had on a Full Contact Fighter hat. I'm at rehab. I'm fucking hammered, drunk, music, everything. And Dana White, and we weren't in the UFC. We were in the IFL at the time. And Dana White used to park his Ferraris and all his exotic cars at the valet at Hard Rock. I guess he was playing blackjack there or whatever, and they used to valet his cars. So all of a sudden, I was drunk, and he comes out, and I see Dana White. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, and Dana White, you know, how are you? And I have the full kind. He's like, yeah, nice hat, kid. And I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, I got these great fighters, you know, Jim and Dan Miller. You got to give them a chance, and blah-blah. And he's like, call Joe Silva. And, you know, Joe Silva? And he, like, literally goes into his phone. He gives me Joe Silva's, you know, phone number and email. And I fucking go back to New Jersey, and I told everybody, guys, you're never gonna guess what I bet Dana White, you know, and true story. And I emailed Joe Silva, and that's what began the dialogue, like a chance encounter with Dana. I mean, we were in contact. I either previously emailed Joe Silva, or back then somebody like Joe Silva. There was like third party people, like in the early stages, that like had the ear of Joe or Dana, and you know, like somehow we were already in motion, but that kind of put it over the top, and we still didn't get the immediate call, but it put us on the radar, you know. And
so that was pretty much almost like the passageway.
We were, again, we were kind of in contact with the UFC, but, you know, getting Joe Silva's, I think, direct email maybe, or something changed, like where it was better. I don't remember exactly what it was, but couldn't hurt to meet Dana White, you know. And,
no.
You know.
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, and so that was pretty cool. That was the first time I met him. But Dana White is one of the most amazing people that I've met. When you really think about it in totality, I mean, a guy who's got so much money, but he does a lot of good. You know what I mean? I've seen firsthand, like what he does. And a lot of it isn't out there, and a lot of it he doesn't tell people. But I mean, even for Dan Miller, I mean, I was on the phone with Lorenzo Fertitta and Dana White when Dan Miller's kid got sick and he needed a kidney transplant, and they were like, we got it. They paid for the whole surgery. They donated $25,000 or $50,000 to a GoFundMe that we started for Dan Miller's child. We raised well over $100,000 through it. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But again, Dana never said tell anybody this story or never leaked. I told it years after in the media, but that's a true story. And not only has he done that for Dan, I've seen him do it for countless people. It just doesn't get out there. So he does a lot of good with his money, Dana. You even saw recently the thing that went viral, the girl that got fired in Hawaii for stopping the thief.
Is it Best Buy?
Best Buy, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, that's how good of a guy Dana is, that the girl gets fired. He goes, I'll hire you. He brings her to Vegas, gives her a VIP experience. She stands on stage with him for the Conor McGregor fight or whatever the big fight was, weigh-ins, gives her a life-changing experience, and literally gave her a job. And said that if you're willing to do that for Best Buy, these people are fucking idiots for firing you. He goes, I want you to work for me. So I'm saying shit like that. We heard about it, right? But I've personally seen, 3, 5, 7 instances like that, and then hundreds of little things, so it's just like, it's good to see.
He's like, you could tell, he's a super passionate guy. I would imagine that comes off when you meet him in person, right? He's a gentleman. Really believes on what he's doing.
Yeah, we had a couple cool interactions, over the years, some special ones. And number one, I have on my Instagram, I have some pictures. I'll never forget, true story. We're standing in the hallway. Khabib fought, and he wears the papaka on his head. And, he put it on Joe Rogan's head. And he kind of became the talk for that. And then he got in a fight on stage, and Mike Tyson got in the way. And I got this cool picture of, Mike Tyson breaking up a fight. Pretty cool, back then, and that was my hero. But then Dana White, I told Dana White, I said, this kid will be your champion someday. And I'll never forget. He looks at me, he's like, okay, kid, whatnot. And he's literally his champion. But New Jersey, I introduced my father to Dana White, and Dana White spent more time than you can imagine talking to my dad about his family, his kids. Dana White, I'm talking about, just really showed that he cared, which I felt was really cool, moment for me. And then later in life, when I was on the promotion side, we had a show at the Borgata in Atlantic City called Cage Fury. I was a partner on, and we had Dana White as a guest to our event for his Looking for a Fight. And, I got to spend a lot of intimate time with him, and we're laughing, and there's a couple fights coming up. And I'm like, oh, you got to watch this one. He's like, why? And I'm like, well, these two kids hate each other. They've been talking shit on the internet all week. He goes, listen, Mike, he's like, in my experience, these fights, when people hate each other, they suck. They're going to be duds. I go, no way. These two fucking kids. And they were 135ers, and they were scrappy. And I'm like, they're going to kill each other. The fucking bell rings. They come out and they look like two deers in the headlight. They're looking at each other. Fight's boring. I'm looking at Dana White. I turn to the right, and it's Dana White, and he's looking at me told you so, with that face, and I'm laughing. So it was a cool little exchange, that a lot of people don't know about. And then, later on when I went back to him, that's why you're the boss. It was just a cool little thing. So, he's a cool dude.
In your experience with that, I see a lot of trash talk, right, leading up to the fight, and everybody gets all amped up and shit. But how much is that real? I mean, or is 50% real, 50% not?
Well, Conor fighting Mayweather, no, that's not real. You know what I mean? Khabib wanting to kill Conor because he's talking about his father's religion and his wife and all these things. That's real. That's. Yeah. He wants to kill him, and back in the day, Diego is Diego. I'll never forget. Yes, with the cross and the G, just. That's legitimate, craziness, and there's different trash talks, but some of it's real, some of it's hype. The Colby Covington thing, obviously it's hype, and there's other people that when they say they're going to kill you, you're scared.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Travel in the world and you meet different people and fighters, and you joke, and we love America, and we always make some jokes about us, but it's a different world. Even Adlan Amagov, who I mentioned earlier, he was fighting Robbie Lawler in Strikeforce, and we were at the Palms in Las Vegas, and we're warming up, and King Mo was in our locker room, and some really good wrestlers, and just Adlon was like clipping his nails and just real weird, like he was at a picnic. And I just he didn't speak English. So and I'm watching him warm up, and then finally I turned to his corner man. It was a gentleman named Marat, very talented martial artist, also here out of New Jersey. And he translates and he's holding pads for him. And I'm like, I go, he's so cool. Is he okay? Is he okay? And he's like, yeah, hold on. And he's like, blah, 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 to Adlon. And Adlon's like, and he answers it back. He's like, yes, Mike. He told me to tell you, his house was blown up with missiles in Kosovo. And he had to live in a tent on this side of the mountain. So fighting a man is a joke to him. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember going back and telling everybody, these guys are fucking from Bosnia. They got missiles and blown up their school, fighting. So the mindset, and to see these people that come from other parts of the world, when you're used to working with, like I said, a Charlie Brenneman, who's from Altoona, Pennsylvania, from the awesome family, and then you get somebody whose house is blown up with fucking missiles. I mean, it's just they're a different mindset. You can look in their eyes and just see something that's different, and it's pretty cool, meeting different people from those parts of the world.
I've always had the mindset. So some people people that talk shit, right? Half people hate them. Whether it's they're doing it because to sell the fight or they really mean it. But I was always the belief of you're about to go in there and fight somebody, someone that wants to hurt you. Whatever it takes for you to get yourself up for that fight, I feel it's all fair game. You know what I mean? I don't hold it against them.
I agree with you 100%. And one of my biggest pet peeves is I hate the touch gloves, the hugging during the fight, and all that bullshit. You could get fucking maimed and killed. Yeah. I was telling you earlier, you land on your neck, you're paralyzed for life. You got your fucking elbow, your face is shifted for the rest of your life. I don't like the hugging and the kissing during the fight. You're a gentleman leading up to the fight. You fight, you hug it out after, you hang out, you could become best friends. But during the fight, you have to have that mindset. Like you're saying, I agree with you 1,000%. You have to have a killer mindset. And whether it takes, psyching yourself up or whether it takes silence, again, every fighter is different. And whatever gets you going, gets you going. I mean, if you listen to, did you watch the last UFC with Paul Felder versus Dan Hooker? Yeah. Did you hear Duke Rufus in his corner?
No,
If you paid attention, you listened to Duke Rufus in his corner. On 2 separate occasions in the rounds, he used Paul's daughter as a trigger and said, do it for your daughter, do it for Ashling. You do it for your daughter. And Paul was very close with his father, rest in peace, who recently passed of cancer, with a very traumatic battle. And then in another round, he's like, you do it for your dad, and those are words that your fighter, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And not only did Paul Felder come out and fucking turn it on and could have won the fight, I mean, you literally saw it. So, I mean, it's knowing what to say and how to say and the triggers and the different things. But some of it is real, the anger, and, you got to do what you got to do to motivate yourself or your fighter. Yeah.
And it's all different. Even when it comes to the walkout music, right? You would think like some guys it's fucking heavy metal where you're ready to. And some guys like Matt Mitchell comes out to Simple Man, right? It's very calming but it depends on what you need. It's what that person feels and what they need.
You can come out dressed as a robot.
But your gear's too fucking heavy, and then Deontay
I got a funny story for you on the walkout sound. Rocco, you were probably at the fight, but I got in a big fight with Jim Miller. So he used to always come out to the same song, and it was his day.
Bad Moon Rising. Great song.
And then we get a main card slot, and then we get both brothers on the New Jersey card at the new Prudential Center in Newark. And I'm like, bro, it'd be so fucking cool. He's like, what? And I'm like, let's come out to the Sopranos theme song, here in New Jersey. He's like, it's not me, and I'm like, come on, man, it'd be so cool and whatnot. Yeah. Somehow, way, shape, and form, I talked him into doing it. So for that fight, we walked out to, woke up this morning, the Sopranos song, and the arena rocked it. So somebody else did it later, maybe even Frankie, but we were the first to do it in New Jersey, and I think he won the fight, thank God, because he would have killed me if not. But yeah, music's important to people. And there was another fight that Dan Miller, I think it was Dan or even Ricardo Romero, had a song and Dana White nixed it, and didn't allow him to use it and then switched it. So Dana White is so hands-on. He is down to fighters' music, telling you what you can and can't have. That's how hands-on he is. So, yeah, music's important. Somebody recently came out to something slow. I forget what it was on one of the most recent cards, and they're like, "What the hell? How are they coming out to this?" It was like a real slow song. I wish I could remember who it was.
I think I would come out to like a nice Barbra Streisand song.
You would.
Just get the fucking crowd just at a nice level.
Hey, listen, but all jokes aside, but if that's what gets you in the right frame of mind to go in there and fight somebody, defend yourself, whatever it is. I mean, it is what it is.
So what does your brother, professional fighter, Moriello, come out to, if my memory serves me correct? Does he switch it up every fight, or is he...
He switches it up.
Has he ever used a War for the Crown song?
He is not.
No.
But he should.
Yeah. I know
we weren't in existence the last time he fought, which was years ago.
I know he did Kill Switch Engage once. I know he did.
And he did Kill Switch. He did Atreyu.
So we're on topic. Give me your fight walkout song now if you're to fight Archie.
If I had to fight
what is your song right now? Is it Pantera as I look at the banner on the wall? Walk.
I think just off the top of my head, I mean, if I had time to really think, but off the top of my head, From Whom the Bell Tolls, Metallica.
That's a great song. What a great song.
Just because that
one. That was our high school football song.
Just when I hear those bells, and you want to know what? When I listen to the radio and AC/DC, you know
the Hell's Bells?
Yeah, I get so upset because I hear those bells and I'm going, oh wait, here goes, you fuck, Hell's Bells, go fuck yourself.
That's a great song.
But
From Whom the Bell Tolls.
From Whom the Bell Tolls, I think so. How about you, Rock? What do you think?
I would come out to
some harder than
Jessica
Why Can't We Be Friends? Why can't we? I would come out to, there's a song by, I love Pantera, but I would fill out some of those other bands. Super Joint Ritual, it's called Fuck Your Enemy. I come out to that song because it's like, it gets me to where I need to be.
All right, I got to Google that one.
How about you?
Well, I did pick a song. Unfortunately, my losing song was an Eminem song.
Season 12 Ultimate Fighter, Andy Main. What can you tell me about this?
So Andy, very, very talented fighter who later on went on to become the King of Pancrase, which is like one of the coolest titles you could ever hear. Andy was training at a school in Denville. We had our fight team rising. Him and his little brother, Mikey Main, another very talented jiu-jitsu guy at the time. They were very young, came to the fight team, trained, and Andy got an amazing opportunity. And it wasn't through me. I don't recall exactly who got it for him or how, maybe he applied on his own, but I'll never forget when he told me, he got accepted, and it really did. It changed his career and his life. Awesome honor, got to go on. And
coming out of your gym, right?
At the time, yes. Yeah, he was representing my gym at the time. He now owns a gym, but, didn't have it at the time. So, yeah, he was at AMA at the time, and he fought a gentleman who later on went on to become very good friends with, who he lost to on the show, who I met a couple times as well. But a very talented martial artist. But that was a cool experience for him, to get on Ultimate Fighter. Dante was on first, for people who I knew. So he was like the second, which was cool.
Now, does that help your gym? I mean, do you see a spike after the show or during the show or whenever it airs?
You know what? We were already in the UFC per se, say like with Jim Miller on like a 5-fight winning streak. And I was pretty good at like promoting. I mean, Twitter really was, there was no Instagram. It didn't exist, right? So when we first started, it was kind of like MySpace era. So, hey, you want to hear a funny story? Your brother, Nick Moriello, actually made me sign up for Facebook. So I was a hardcore MySpace user. Like that was it. Like you rotate your girlfriends, whoever's on number one with the song. And, it was like a mind fuck game, right? Like I had these, 2 girls I was dating at the same time. Why'd you put her in your top 6? And it was like the thing, And then all of a sudden we were at my house, Rocco. You may have even been there. We got to ask Nick. And Nick's like, bro, I'm on this Facebook, and, I'm like, what the fuck is that? I don't want to do nothing new. And I signed up for Facebook. But then, Instagram wasn't around. So I remember telling these guys, get on Instagram, get on Twitter, do this. And no. Like nobody ever wanted to do it, realizing now how fucking big it is, So about helping the gym. So we were having after parties, like every time Jim fought or whatnot, we were going to TIFFs, and a very dear friend of mine, Mike Romanelli, who you guys will be meeting very soon because Mike does big comedy nights at his his Morris Plains location, and every Wednesday night he does an open mic. That might be cool too. Maybe we go on a Wednesday night, we broadcast out of there, with the an open mic night. But we did after parties there, so we had a lot of fanfare at the time. But it helped Andy for sure. You know, he had a lot of amazing opportunities after that. You know, and of course, it helped the gym too. You know, we promoted it.
Oh, of course.
You know,
Okay,
watch parties and you know, some sponsorships. So you know, it was pretty cool.
Who's your favorite mixed martial artist of all time? Not necessarily somebody that came through AMA, but
That's a tough question. I was always loved Bas Rutten, Vanderlei Silva. It's hard not to love Chuck. Tough question, but yeah, I mean, I guess those are the first that came to mind. Oh, that's another one too, Frank Shamrock. I'll never forget when I met Frank Shamrock for the first time. It was an honor because he was such a badass. He was so talented. I modeled AMA Fight Club after the Lions Den, pretty much. Like Ken Shamrock had this like Lions Den team. They were all fucking killers. Like everyone was in shape. You know, Guy Mesger, Frank Shamrock, Trey Tellerman, and back in the day, Mikey, Burnett. They were but they were badass. They
Jerry
were just so cool.
Bolander, right?
Yeah. And they were just leg lock. You remember that leg lock I said earlier is so dangerous? They would do that. And Ken Shamrock started his like camp where like he bring fighters into like the boys' house, and he would only give you like chicken, steak, and rice. And you had to like earn the food, and like I mean, you had to do initiations, like 5,000 push-ups and run to your like. So I wanted that tough mindset. So like my early day AMA practices were like the Lions. Then like it was a fucking gauntlet of like survival. So I always loved the Shamrocks and Frank Shamrock especially.
So you've managed many fighters, you've quartered many fighters. My brother has fought a little bit, and you've trained
in his
him.
corner.
You've been in his corner. I want to talk about one fight in AC that he had.
Okay.
He won fairly quickly.
That was a quick fight.
It was probably a good 20, 30 seconds. It was he subbed the guy out. But more importantly, Arch, I want to talk about your night that night.
I was just going to say, that was the one we were talking about earlier that night.
Yeah.
We're talking about circa maybe 2012-ish.
Yeah, I think that was the night, that was the Atlantic City experience. As far as I was driving down with my girlfriend at the time, who was my wife now, and for some reason I was at my brother's house right beforehand, and we were eating corned beef and cabbage. I'm not fucking Irish, but we were eating corn. My mom makes it. I don't know. It was delicious. I don't eat it. For some reason, I was eating it that night. I ate it. It was a great night. So I was like, Mom, we're going to see Rocky's brother fight. I can't wait. We're going to Atlantic City. I'll talk to you guys later. Lisa and I, we get in the car. Something you shouldn't do, but we were drinking Jameson on the way down the Parkway, Red Bull. And I look over to her, and I just start sweating. And I'm sweating. I'm like, Hun, I think I got to take a shit. And she's like...
You're not comfortable in the relationship at this point.
Oh yeah. Where
shitting was introduced?
Yeah, oh yeah.
He just said this
very touchy, gray area of you dating. The sneak shit.
She goes, well... We're like exit 60, and anybody knows what is the Black Horse Pike? Like what's AC?
30. AC 38.
38?
38, yeah.
She's like, we're exit 60. We're like, and I'm like,
not gonna make it.
I'm like, all right, no problem. So I put it was Jameson and Red Bull. I put it down on the console, and I unbuckle the seatbelt.
No, you didn't.
I unbuckle. No. I unbuckle my pants, and I'm like this. I'm like, all right. So like for a second, you get like, oh, that ease. Like you're like, all right, we're good.
It's just loosening up.
It's called false hope.
It's called your
yeah. Right. I think she had like a bump in the fast lane, and I was like, oh god, I gotta go. She's like, what do you want me to do? I'll never forget it. Exit 55. She pulls off exit 55 off the Parkway. Desolate, no fucking lights. She pulls over. I go, I'm so fucking sorry. I am so sorry right now. I get out of the car, and I just fucking dropped a deuce right on the side of this road, and the steam was coming up. And she's looking at me like...
Toilet paper? Socks?
I go like this. I go, do you have anything? She goes... Check the trunk.
So you waddled over there with shit dripping from your ass?
I waddled.
You had to marry her after this point. I mean, if
waddled.
you're shitting on the side of the road,
she doesn't leave.
That's it.
I open up the trunk.
She's the keeper.
And all she had was a fucking guinea tea, and it was ribbed.
What about your socks? I would have taken the socks at that point. I would have taken my socks right off it.
I wiped my ass. I threw the guinea tea off to the side of the road, and I said, you want to know what? I'm this far. I walk now right now. there is if I remember correctly, the road was like it was not barricaded.
We should
but
tour this road, exit 55. We'll call it the Archie stop.
One car can only pass through at a time.
It was a devastating shit. It blocked the road. It's altered traffic. Shit.
Car passes. I go in front of the fucking. We have a Jetta. I go in front of the Jetta. The high beams are on me with my pants down. I'm like, check for shit.
Oh God!
I go, honey. We're going to Atlantic City. Check for shit.
Did she do it?
Yeah.
No wonder why you're married. I mean, what a
my wife.
saint! What a saint!
And then next thing you know,
What a saint!
next thing you know, I'm back on the Parkway, smoking a Victory cigarette, finishing my Red Bull and vodka,
Good for you.
Red Bull and Jameson.
That's a man.
And then we get to, and I'm like, hey, Rock, what's up, bro? Nick's fighting tonight. Let's
Did you
go.
shake his hand? Because I'm sure we didn't wash our hands on the side of the road.
So that was my last Nick fight.
I would have literally just told her we can't be together anymore. After
He
this
stink
fucking
bombed you that night,
experience.
Rock.
So that was my last Nick fight, and he's got to fight again. What is he? 40?
Is he gonna fight again?
Who the fuck knows?
Nick, hit us up.
Nick.
You want to fight?
If you're out there, Nick.
Listen, I mean, I told
Nick
him.
wished me a happy birthday on Saturday. I love Nick Moriello.
Happy birthday! by
Send
the
me
way.
a text on Saturday. Thank you, Nick.
Happy
Does he
belated,
listen to the
brother.
pod?
Oh,
Thank you, Archie.
he will.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
So, tell us about your venture with the great Burt Watson. What you're doing now?
So after UFC and cornering and managing, I got onto the promotion side. You know, we did a bunch of shows and, across the country. I was part of a group that took the company public on the NASDAQ and got to ring the closing bell of the NASDAQ, which was pretty cool. And literally was on the Jumbotron in Times Square. And my wife and I announced the birth announcement of my son that we're having a boy.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the NASDAQ with a sign, so which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
So that'll be with us for the rest of our lives. So we've had a cool journey with that. But I got fortunate enough to meet Burt, who is the man at the UFC. I mean, he was handpicked by Dana White when the Fertittas bought the UFC. I mean, Burt was the coordinator for like Klitschko fights and Tyson fights back then. And he was in Vegas working a fight. And Dana White came to him and was like, I need you. We're doing our first show. We bought this thing called the UFC. We want you to be our guy. And Burt not only did the show for him, he did every one after that for 14 years. And in 14 years, the only UFC show that he ever didn't work, I think there was 3 of them. Both kids' weddings, and like something else that was like major. Other than that, I mean, for 40, we were talking earlier, Rock, about watering down shows. So back then when there was 28 shows or 32 or 22 or whatever it was, Burt did every single one of them all over the world. So then when, he left the UFC, he still had a love for the game, so we brought him to work for our company in Atlantic City, and he became the coordinator for Cage Fury at the time, and then later on to Alliance with me in this big picture. And then that business unit didn't work out, and we started a new company, but this time we did it together, Burt and I, along with another partner. And it's Burt Watson Promotions, and, leveraging our contacts and everything we know. Burt had a great relationship, the entertainment director at the Hard Rock. So now we signed the contract with the Seminole Hard Rock in Florida. And most recently they opened a brand new guitar shaped hotel and, a huge celebrity grand opening, and the Super Bowl was just there. And, that was the center of it all, the Hard Rock. So great partner, great brand. And we have some shows coming up in June and September of this year. And hopefully the June show, you guys are going to come down to Florida and maybe even pod out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And record live. Maybe we'll get Nick Moriello on that card. Why don't we make this an extravaganza? We get Nick on the card. You guys do the podcast.
Fantastic.
How about that? Let's call him live right now on the show and ask him if he wants to fight June 12th in Florida. You up for giving him a call, Rock?
Yeah, hold on.
Ask him if he wants to fight
making a
June
steak.
12th. Hey.
Is this
Hello,
happening?
Nick. This is Regis Philbin from Who Wants to Be a New Year Millionaire. What's up, bro? I'm doing my hair.
Dude, you got bro tomorrow. What the fuck you doing?
What?
What an asshole.
Come on, Nick. I'm going to offer you a spot on the card.
And that's Nick in a microcosm.
Will he call back before the show ends?
He's
That's
probably
a bet.
sleeping.
Now, what if that was Dana White calling him?
Hey, listen.
I want to circle back real quick. I want to talk to you about executive protection.
Okay.
I think it's fucking great.
That was a condom company that he owned.
you were a bodyguard for some time, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, can you give us any insight, any for the celebs, any good stories, any run-ins, anything that you'd like to share that?
It's funny because it's one of those tricky things where, and my instructor / owner of the company, Tom Pateri, is no fucking no joke, no nonsense. Like, you can't ask for a picture, you can't make small, like, he's very, very strict, right? And Tom has a brother too, he's an awesome guy. And they got Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson came to Morristown, New Jersey. So I'll give you a good story. So he was going to open a restaurant. So I don't know if you remember, he had a relationship with the owners of a restaurant here in New Jersey called Aldo and Gianni's. And he had like the 2 kids somehow. And, he had a relationship with the family where he wanted to get away from Hollywood. And he literally lived with his family here in New Jersey for a while. And they were restaurateurs. And they were going to buy a restaurant in Morristown, which was an old historic, piece of land that maybe has converted into something.
Yeah.
So Michael Jackson standing in the middle of fucking Morristown with an umbrella for the sun, for the sun.
Okay.
And looking at a building and Tom's brother, it's a funny story because we tell it openly, but we had this policy. Again, you can't do this, but it's fucking Michael Jackson. So Tom's brother asked him a picture, got the picture, but then Michael Jackson, here's the coolest part. So Rocco, Michael Jackson wanted to go to Short Hills Mall. And they're like, we can't bring you to Short Hills Mall. Everybody's going to go fucking crazy. Michael Jackson, blah, blah, blah. So they devised a scheme where they put him in a wheelchair and put like a blanket over him and made him like an old lady. No, like true story. Wheeled him through Short Hills Mall and they shopped forever. And it wasn't like TV where you see him like going into those antique stores. Just wanted to get out. I mean, Michael Jackson, as we all know, is a different type of person. And he just wanted to go to the mall or whatever. Yeah. So they put him in this wheelchair, dressed him as an old lady. True story, crazy story. And, made it. Nobody recognized them, and they were at I think like Lord and Taylor or whatever that one is, right in the middle, before the mall, if you know Short Hill Splits. And as legend has it, I wasn't on this detail, but Tom, his brother, and like a couple other guys that again, I'm telling you can't even ask for pictures. There's no lying, and there's no exaggerating. Believe me, with a story. So it's funny is that as legend has it, there was like an 8 or 10 or 12, whatever it was, a little kid with the mom at the cosmetics counter, and she pointed at Michael Jackson, said, "Look, mommy, it's Michael Jackson." And the mom's like, "Yeah, whatever, blah, blah." And Michael Jackson apparently looked at the little girl or boy, whatever it was, and winked. And that was like a cool, funny subplot of story that nobody recognized them except for it was a little kid and it never got unearthed. But, just shit like that. I mean, bro, they had at the time Married with Children. This is before me. So I was watching Buildings at 19. I'm 44 now. So put in perspective how long ago it was. And I'm watching Buildings, but at the time Married with Children's on the air, and one of our clients was David Faustino. He was like a little wise ass. So I mean, he's like 16. You know what I mean? He wants to go to nightclubs and this, and the company he was working for had him. And they used to throw him in the trunk. So he was like a wise ass. But,
I'll hide you. Don't worry about it. Get the fuck in the trunk.
Protected.
So that was the fun part. You meet people like that. So I mean, I did the Grammy Awards. So I had Eminem.
How cool was that though? The Grammy Awards.
The sickest ever, because you don't only get the Grammys, you get the whole wraparound event. So we did music cares, we did private parties. So, Tommy Lee was married to Pamela Anderson at the time. They're there, which was cool. And then NSYNC was together. We had Eminem and Eminem. So this is pretty cool at the time. Well, not pretty cool, but at the time, being in charge of the fucking Grammys, there was a death threat on Eminem. He actually performed that night at the Grammys wearing a bulletproof vest that nobody knew about.
Really?
Yeah. It was 2003 at the Garden.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So, but we did a lot of shit that we used to pride ourselves on. We're who the bodyguards call when the bodyguards need help. So you asked earlier, executive protection versus bodyguard. So we did a lot of international, high risk work. So I've been to Manila, Philippines, multiple times on details where they want to fucking behead Americans. It was a group called the Abu Sayyaf, and they were kidnapping Americans for ransom. So it was a business. So you have Johnson & Johnson down there, or whoever was down there, and they would like kidnap an American, call Johnson & Johnson, say, we have Rocco Moriello, we're going to behead him unless you send us like 22,000 USD. But they make it an amount that they know you're going to pay. They threaten to behead, and they made a business, and they would like literally carjack and kidnap convoys of cars and different types of things. And so that was a real threat. And that it was pretty scary. You're going to fucking Manila and, they're threatening to behead you. So, we did shit like that too. That was like not in the celebrity end of it, but like real cool, like operational type stuff overseas. And that's what I really liked. And I thought that would be my path at the time. I really loved it.
Yeah, I feel like the first picture, like when I met you, the first picture I saw you wearing like a flak jacket with like a fucking gun in your hand. I'm like, all right.
Well, we had some fucking real deal, like operators, like SEALs and, governmental people that would teach shooting. We had international training camp in Swiftwater, PA, where we had, we were literally training, Secret Service and governmental agencies and tactical shooting and gun disarms and all crazy stuff. But I was a young pup. So I was absorbing it all. So I was meeting these people that were, Green Berets that were like on operations and, we had a deployment team that, it was a TAC team of like 8 guys with all sorts of high-powered weaponry. And it's probably the picture you're referring to. I think it's on my Instagram where we're all like holding Uzis and, MP5s and like real cool shit that we had access to. But it wasn't your bodyguard's bodyguard. Yeah.
There you go.
That was pretty good.
Like, don't ever call me a fucking bodyguard again.
Where do we see you in the next 6 months, 8 months?
Well, all right. That's a good question. It's interesting. I feel like in MMA, I've done it all, meaning like every role. When you own a restaurant, you got to wash the dishes, bartend, do all that. Yeah. So like in the fight game, really don't think there's many hats I didn't wear. I'm a fighter, trainer, manager, promoter,
A trainer?
I
heard that word.
Charlie Brenneman made up a word and he called me his, trainager, was it?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what I
my trainager, because I was his trainer and manager.
Yeah.
So, just feel like I've like done it all, but I've never really done it all at the same time. You know what I mean? So like we had AMA at its height where we have like 20 fighters in the UFC and blah, blah, blah. And then I also had a management company. So they were kind of running neck and neck, but I had nothing to do with promotions. And then I got like out of the training of the fighters, out of the management, and all in on the promotions. But then I started to realize too that like they all kind of filter each other. Like I can train you in my gym, manage your career, and then promote you in a show. So now the goal moving forward is to operate all 3 cylinders, if you will, at the same time. So we're building a brand new gym, due to open hopefully in April. We just literally today got our permit approved. Now, mind you, I signed the lease in November.
Yeah, you were telling me
we just got the permits today. So now we're going to start demo from now through the weekend, start building through March. But we're going to have a brand new facility in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey, where we've been home for 16 years in Hanover Township, which comprises Morris Plains, Cedar Knolls, and Whippany. So staying in the township, but we're getting a regulation-sized boxing ring, men's and women's locker room, showers. We're going to have 3 giant dedicated training mats, each specific for the art. So we'll have a Muay Thai area with all heavy bags and Muay Thai flooring, a giant jiu-jitsu room with, padded walls, cage, kids martial arts floor. We're excited about that. Brought in some exciting partners, which segues into this, is that one of our current top fighters is Vilson Nedradroni. They're always hard, right? Nurmagomedov, where I learned, Nurmagomedov. And now Vilson Nedragoni. It's very, it's a ND. It's a real hard pronunciation I'm learning. But one of the top fighters around. He fought for Bert and I down in Florida. Almost snapped the guy's neck off. Or almost like one of those crazy guillotines, we were talking about earlier. And just uber talented, an Olympian, Albanian, like Olympic level wrestler. And his cousin and some other friends started a sports management company to manage Vilson's career, and then took some other fighters in, including a really Division 1 AA, I think it is, All-American wrestler Desmond Towns. He wrestled at Johnson and Wales, and they had the management arm. So we kind of put everything together, and we're opening gym together. Gyms, plural, multiple units, as well as we're going to scale and grow the sports management component, which is called AVI Sports Management. And then due to my partnership with Bert Watson, we have the promotion arm of it. So now I'm going to have the ability for the first time ever to have all 3 verticals of training and owning a gym, managing fighters, and promoting them at the same time. So I do believe that the future that I'm hoping to create is a scenario where we can bring fighters in from all over the world and train at our facility, either handpick, mutually agree who to work with to manage their career, and then get them the opportunity to fight at a property like the Hard Rock, you know, in Florida, and, you know, these amazing platforms, or, you know, using my connections within the industry to put them in other organizations like Lou Neglia's Ring of Combat, where we put Vilson for one fight when I wasn't using him. So I do think that the future is that, and I love martial arts, but I also mentioned earlier, I believe that the world is changing. You know, you can't go to a church anymore. You can't get on a plane without the threat of getting shot. A daycare, your child's going to get stabbed. You know, like, it's just fucking crazy, the world we live in. So I believe everybody should have training, you know, whether you're a father, a mother, a kid, somebody in your family sure as hell needs to be trained. And I think people's eyes are opening up a little bit as the craziness is going on, and it's almost like a funnel. You know, people should get trained, right? So now I have the means to not only do it, and I have done it, but I'm going to bring back some of what made me who I am, which is, we talked earlier about the executive protection world and the special operations world, and the tactics that we used. We're going to bring them back now to this new facility, and my instructor is actually going to come in, who hasn't taught in many years, and all our law enforcement contacts, you know, guys that are currently teaching hand-to-hand tactics in the Morris County Academy, you know, for the Secret Service. We're going to offer a program called Martial Ops, which is a combination of special operations and martial arts, and we're going to offer it to the public. So things that we were teaching, you know, military and law enforcement operators, we're going to teach to your average housewife, to your dad, how to stay safe, crowds, and simple little things, as well as hands-on tactics that, you know, you don't want your wife to go to jiu-jitsu and roll between some sweaty dude's legs, or you're a person that doesn't want to hit somebody in the face, but you should still learn to defend yourself. Yeah. So we're going to offer this program based on what we know and offer it to the public. So our website, amafightclub.com, we're currently in Whippany, so nothing is even up there about the new gym. As we progress this journey, we'll be documenting it on all social media platforms, personal and AMA Fight Club related, Twitter, Instagram, all across the board. The building of the gym, all offers, so you can always go there, or our Facebook page, or even follow me personally. So, you know, we stay in contact. But if you go to the website, amafightclub.com, opt in, you'll get newsletters and information.
Man, it's been a pleasure. You're a great dude, a great friend, a great businessman. Your vision is awesome. Like, what you're creating now with these 3 platforms it's amazing. I mean, it's definitely something that I feel like is going to serve you well. You know, like you said, you've done it all, A to Z in the mixed martial arts world.
Hailing from fucking New Jersey, too.
You Mustangs in the house. The Mustangs in the house.
We got Mustangs and Bengals fucking heads up here.
We played you guys every year.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for the Parla Vecchio era.
Chep Parlavecchio.
Played against him, and then he wound up coaching for Clifton years later after
he
me.
Did.
But Jermaine Johnson was the man in Bloomfield.
I'm good friends with Jermaine.
Oh, yeah, I know Jermaine from back in the day. I don't know if I'm
very good guy.
He's coaching, right? Isn't he coaching?
Belleville.
Is he coaching Belleville?
Buccaneer.
Oh, wow.
He's a Buccaneer now.
The rivals.
That's it. Mike, is there anything else that we could tell podcast land?
Keep it on. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I mean, if you're New Jersey based, definitely check out AMA Fight Club.
The great Mike Constantino. Thank you, pal. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun, a lot of history here, and we'll be seeing each other soon.
So that was another awesome interview in the books. Mike Constantino, gym owner, trainer, MMA manager, bodyguard, a.k.a. executive protection. Don't fuck with him. Good friend of ours. Check out his website, amafightclub.com, amafightclub.com. Fun for the family. Classes offered 7 days a week. Try a free class. Go in there. It's for moms. It's for kids. It's for all levels, beginners, experienced. They have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, kids martial arts. Check it out. Hopefully Rocco takes some lessons to man up a little bit. So, with that being said, Rocco, is there anything left that you'd like to say to the people?
If you're with Dave Righetti, the ghost of Tom Petty, you're eating mom's spaghetti, and your palms are sweaty while you're singing Black Betty, then you're listening to Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast.